All right, guys. So here we are. We got a special guest episode lined up for you guys. Myself, Chad, Carly without her makeup. Um, we're really happy to welcome one of the all-time greats to the podcast tonight. I'm not talking about Patty. He's filling in, by the way. Our good buddy Patty from the Average Joe's episode. If you haven't caught that episode, check it out. We're looking forward to more Average Joe's coming up. But Patty's filling some shoes tonight, and he's going to do his best. We've got an episode for the '80s fanboys, guys. We got one for the real hardcore deep divers of the Toronto Maple Leafs nation,
Ballard era.
the Harold Ballard era. So, without any further ado, welcome to episode 13 of the Deke Snipes LA podcast. Titter tatter, let's get at her. All right, guys. Welcome to this is episode 13 of the Deke Snipes LA podcast.
Yep.
We're joined today by a very special guest, Patty Phillips. Welcome to the show, Patty Phillips. I'm just kidding. Patty is a guest. Kylie couldn't make it tonight, but we're joined by a guy I grew up idolizing for as a child. He was born and raised in Hamilton, Ontario. He was ranked in 1983 the second best goaltending option in the entry draft. He was drafted 48th overall that year by the Toronto Maple Leafs. Spent 8 seasons with the Leafs, veteran of over 200 games in the NHL. He's the little big man of NHL goalies, the one, the only, Mr. Allan Bester. Welcome to the show, Allan.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, sir.
For episode 13.B.
Yeah, there you go. That's the tongue in cheek that's going on here. We tried to record this more or less the same episode, not 24 hours ago, and technical difficulties led to us here again. So yeah, here we are. We're gonna have a similar chat. We're well prepped now, I guess, if nothing else. So yeah, I guess we'll dive right into it, like we had hoped to do yesterday. Yep. So obviously, Allan, we talked about. I just mentioned about how you were drafted in '83. Just wanted for you to be able to elaborate on your, growing up in hockey, who you might have cheered for, favorite player, outdoor rinks, what you were into as a kid.
Well, as I said, grew up in Hamilton, and at age 9, I decided to play organized ice hockey. Prior to that, I'd always been at the HAAA grounds, frozen park rink, and I would play goal against the older kids and in rubber boots and a baseball mitt, and and they're firing pucks at me, and I'm not smart enough not to stand in front of them. And then it moved on to playing Kiwanis League in Hamilton for a couple of years, and then from there I advanced. I got scouted or whatever, and asked to play in Tigertown, which was a step up, like AA.
Yeah.
So I played there for a few years, and then moved on to the Hamilton AAA Huskies. And from there, I got drafted to Brantford. And when I was with Brantford, I got drafted to the NHL. And at age 19, I started playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So basically, that's my hockey career.
There it is in a nutshell.
From start to finish. Yeah. And when I was younger, when I was 9 years old, we had an outdoor rink that we practiced on. We never had the 4 a.m. Situation where I had to be at the rink at 4 a.m. and practice. Yeah. We had games on Saturday and Sunday, but we would practice like one night a week on Thursday nights out on the outside frozen rink. And that was about it. I mean, it was pretty basic. My dad was at an age, my dad was 49 when I was born. So he had the time for me where he never had time for my siblings who were 10 to 20 years older than me. But he never had time for them he was always working. But by that time in his life, he had kind of simplified his job situation and had time to take me to practice and games. And I was the benefit for it.
And you were the youngest of 8, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. It was 8 of us. Wow. I have a sister who's 7 years older, and then 4 brothers who were 10 to 20 years older, and 2 other sisters that fall in there also. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Big family.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of mouths to feed. That's a one busy dad for sure.
yes, it was.
Yeah, indeed.
So were the
Indeed,
Leafs
indeed.
your favorite team growing up, Allan?
Sadly, no. Montreal Canadiens were my favorite team. My dad was a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, so I couldn't be a Leaf fan, but my dad was. So
Heartbreaker.
yeah, so I was a Montreal Canadian fan. Ken Dryden was my favorite player. As you can see from the picture over my shoulder, I had an autograph. That's my my second autograph. I got one with Johnny Bauer, I and Wendel
Nice.
Clark together. But then I got Ken Dryden to sign that for me. Jim McKinney was actually able to get it for me and send it down to me. So that's my pride and joy, my Dryden photo, my favorite mask, and his
That's a
iconic
classic
stance. So that's my one piece of memorabilia that I do retain.
Yeah,
He's a big icon.
I love talking with goalies, primarily because you guys are really weird. I find goalies to be really
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It's a compliment. You guys are not the average guys. You guys are out. You think outside the box. You got to be a bit weird to stand in front of a 4x6 and let people fire hard rubber at you repeatedly. And
I found that fun.
It sounds like fun, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah,
And
weird.
sounds like fun until you get thrust into the Leafs net and you get the most shots, the most shots of any
They have
goalie.
Al
in the
McInnes
league.
blasting one at you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what I want to roll into, I guess. We had a little clip done up, and I'll play the clip, and it pretty much outlines my memories of Alan Bester prior to having met Alan, of course, here. I'll share that screen with you guys now. Just give me 1 second. And I was big. I mean, I was a kid of the 80s, so I grew up dying for Christmas morning to come to get my hands on that VHS cassette tape of Rock'em Sock'em. And I do believe this might have been, I can't remember which year. I'm going to say 2 or 3. I know I wasn't old enough to get it at Christmas. I end up getting this VHS after the fact, right? Because I wanted all of them, and I wanted to backdate to the ones that I hadn't gotten.
This one's from Rock'em Sock'em 1, is it not?
1? Is it that early? God, how old are you, Alan?
Feeling older by the minute.
Yeah, we're not helping the situation here. All right, guys, I'll throw it up there for you.
Yeah.
You can see that? Yep. All right.
Toronto's Allan Bester, who I've often said has seen more rubber than a dead skunk on the Trans-Canada Highway. I heard a goalie complaining one time he had 13 shots in a period. Allan gets that many on a shift. Has he got a great glove or what? Get a load of this.
There's a big time trend in all your highlights. There's always a player ends up in the back of the net, not the puck. That's,
which is a good thing.
Well,
yeah.
oftentimes Allan is the beneficiary of a body slam or a body check or stuff that don't belong in hockey.
All over.
They didn't mind running into the goalies back then. They figured that was
No.
a way to throw him off his game.
Yeah, and there used to be retaliation for that too. Now there's nothing. Not in Leafland anyway.
No, there used to be someone to back you up, but not so much anymore.
Yeah.
So obviously the theme of that clip from Grapes was the glove hand, and that's what I always remembered. Like I said, I used to play out in the streets with my buddies, and I always liked to be a goalie and wear the Road Warrior gear, and I was always Bester with the big glove save, you know,
Big cartwheel.
The big cartwheel. Yeah. And someone would bowl me over and I would cry, but yeah, no, it's what I remember. So that's what I was always curious. Like, what was it? What did you do in your training regiment, or what was it about growing up that gave you such a great glove hand?
Well, I used to use a tennis ball and stand fairly close to a wall and just throw it at myself and catch it. Yeah, just working on the reflexes of catching the ball coming off the wall quite a bit. Plus, I played a lot. I used to get calls from all over the city to come and play for their road hockey team, playing Westdale versus, Parkdale, and they'd want me to come play net for them. So I was always playing, and I don't know, I just had quick reflexes. I mean, I got from point A to point B quickly, and my glove hand was pretty good. So it was just natural.
Guys like going high on you, shooting top corner all the time.
Right, and plus my size being low, they were always shooting high. So you notice that a lot of the times I'd have to go upstairs with the glove to get it.
Yeah, see all that open net, you're gonna go for it.
Yep.
But back in those
Little
days,
did they know. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Little did they know I could catch it.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, like, the glove hand save, and you don't see it as much anymore. You often see the Patrick Waugh glove hand save. It was such a big thing in the 80s and the 90s. That flashy save and with the glove hand and that extra little movement over the head. I don't think you see that as much anymore. That little bit of flash, but it was a great part of the game. It added to the value of having those goalies in net. And it was fantastic.
Well, guys
didn't do it.
So large nowadays, their shoulders are blocking the upper corners of the net, so
Right.
you don't have to bring up the big glove save. With my size, I had to challenge a long way to cut down the angle and then use my reflexes. I always thought of myself as a shortstop type of goaltender where, I just needed to be as agile as possible and get the glove on it or either side.
Right, and you get someone like Ben Bishop, 6'7". I mean, that's a full extra foot,
Extra
I mean,
foot.
where's he
Shrugs his
catching
shoulder,
pucks?
makes a top glove hand save. By
Where's he
shrugging his
catching
shoulder.
pucks?
Yeah, exactly. On his
So
backside, maybe. Go ahead,
I
Pat.
heard a rumor, and I think this was Kelly Rudy who used to do this, who used to tie a skate lace inside of his jersey so that when that glove would go up, this would be underneath the arm, would be a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is. It wouldn't be as flimsy, the puck would hit it and would just drop. Are you
For a
familiar
lot
with
of
anything
things, goaltenders did a lot of things over the years to try and cheat.
Yeah.
Tony Esposito had a webbing put between his knees, so when he butterflied, he had a webbing between his knees to help stop the puck. Mike Palmetier created the cheater on the glove, between the thumb and the wrist, that extra piece there. That was designed, I believe, by Mike Palmetier. Hextall used to wear pants that were 5 times too big. Guy I played with in Orlando here, the Solar Bears, he would take rolls and add them to the outsides of his pants and the insides of his legs to try and
No way.
so when he went down to cover more net. I mean, the goalies are always looking for an edge and doing things to as far as I was concerned, cheat.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
awesome.
crazy. I didn't
Patty.
know that.
I didn't even know that we mentioned about the string,
No.
but it makes a ton of sense. Make it rigid like a sail. Catch it in a
Smart.
sail.
even more reason why we probably were going to be in the 93 finals. I think Kelly Rudy probably cheated more than he had to or needed to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's competitive advantage is one thing, but bending the rules. Anyway, it's going to be a thing. It's always a thing. Players are always going to play on the edge too. We see that with the constant cross-checking and things that are illegal in the game, but it still happens. And
Everyone's
going to live on
try to
those
get away
edges
with
because
whatever
that's
they
what
can.
gives you that chance to throw the other guys off. It is what it is. One thing that we chatted about briefly yesterday, which I found incredibly interesting, and of course you're an excellent reference for it because you played at a time when there wasn't a lot of money in the game for players. I mean, the contracts were not Hollywood wages like they are today or even in the 90s. Can you elaborate a little bit, Allan, on what the salaries were like and what you're willing to say personally is fine, whatever you can throw us?
I was laughing. You guys pulled up my contract from 1984. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
1984, I was the starting goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs, making $70,000. 10 years to the day later, Curtis Joseph is the starting goaltender for the Toronto Maple Leafs, making $7 million a year. So in 10 years, salaries went up 100% for that situation. So
It's insane.
It's with salary disclosure and with collective bargaining agreement and our salary arbitration, things got a lot better for the players as far as their salaries are concerned, and the fact that Allan Eagleson was no longer representing the union, which helped a lot too.
A bit of conflict of
sure.
interest there. So did you guys pay into like or have access to a pension and whatnot back then in the 80s, or was that something later on developed?
No, there was a pension. The owners the teams would put in like $1,000 a year for your pension,
Oh yeah.
which by the time I moved on to the minors, had increased by tenfold, which would have been nice. You know, I have a pension that I could have started collecting at age 45. I haven't touched it yet. I'm hoping I will until at least I'm 65.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, you mentioned the contract. That's everything is fair game, seems like, on the internet, and that's what we were able to pull off last night. It was a really great facsimile of Allan's original contract. This is the last page.
1984.
Amendum to the National Hockey League players standard players contract, and it's talks about salary and bonuses, right? It's got your
John Hancock
moniker
name and your witness, which was your agent at the time. So I find that stuff is so interesting. I always like digging back to old contracts and being like, I just can't believe that the guys I rooted for in the 80s were making marginally more than like my dad was making, you know, like at the same time. And it just absolutely blew my mind, you know, just average Joe's
you reach the elite
game.
level of a God-given talent. You reach the elite level in your roommate, you know, you got roommates.
Yeah.
So in an apartment.
Yeah. But then again, you look at 10 years before me, you know, there were players that had to have a second job in the summer.
Yeah. It's kind of like lacrosse,
to make ends meet, because they were getting, you know, $10,000 a year. So things change over the years. So they would have looked at when I was playing saying, oh, how lucky we are and how much we're getting paid. Well, 10 years from there, it's the same situation. So it's a progression.
Yeah, no.
How did it work for you? Did you stay in Hamilton, say around your parents' area because you lived around Toronto, or did you room with some of the other players?
Say that again. I'm sorry. No, I lived in Toronto. I got an apartment. There was to be no way to go to practice every day, driving 45 minutes from Hamilton to Toronto for practice.
That's right.
With the Toronto traffic as it was, occasionally I would take the subway in, which was interesting because everyone and his brother had their ideas on how to cure the Leaf situation. So that was always fun.
Yeah, sure. Well, we got all the answers here, right? I mean, we've got all the answers.
Yeah.
Casual fan, the coach GM, of course. That leads me to something. Actually, you just sparked my memory on something I had seen. We didn't talk about it in our previous chat. I remember seeing a video. I don't remember who. It was one of the local news stations. They interviewed you after you'd been selected by the Leafs, and there was a lot made of Allan Bester, the sex symbol, as a title that was being tossed around as a 19-year-old being drafted to the Leafs and girls lining up for autographs. I mean, do you still have that same experience in Orlando there now? Allan?
Yeah, definitely. At 57 years old, yeah. No, I've got total anonymity here in Orlando. I'm known as a sales manager for Hilton Hotels. That's about it. Yeah, back then it was an interview by the Hamilton local news, and they called me Disco Handsome and Darling of the N Blues.
Disco Handsome. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that they interviewed or never interviewed, but got a soundbite from one of the girls who was lining up to get an autograph. She's like, "Oh my God, I can't wait to meet Allan Bester." You know, it was pretty well done by the Hamilton News. I thought it was pretty cute. But anyway, I thought I'd throw it out there because it just popped in my memory. But I mean, we're talking about the Leafs now. I guess we're into that portion of the show. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Harold Ballard era. I mean, he was noted among fans as being the destruction of the team, while among the players, he was beloved by a lot of the players. The players seemed to be like he was the player's owner, even though he didn't pay out the big bucks. He still treated everyone really well. I wonder if you could elaborate on your experience with Ballard.
Well, I was a fan of Mr. Ballard. I mean, when I first came up, played the World Junior Championships, and when I got back to Brantford, I was told that I'd be going to Toronto. So I went to Toronto, and I sat on the bench for a couple of games, and I got a chance to play, and I played 4 or 5 games, played pretty well, and I got sent back to junior. Well, I come to find out that the fans in Toronto were chanting my name, wanting me to come back, and Mr. Ballard, in his wisdom, decided that even though they were having a bad year and they were going to miss the playoffs, he said, the fans want Bester, bring him back. So I was able to come back from junior junior A hockey at age 19 in January and finished the season in Toronto. And so I've got nothing but good things to say about Mr. Ballard. He treated me very well. My brother passed away a year or two later, and Mr. Ballard made the trip from Toronto to Hamilton to be at his funeral. And that was something that touched me very deeply.
Oh, for sure.
You certainly didn't need to take the time to do that, and that's the kind of stories you love to hear. We don't always get that kind of those kind of stories out in the media. Certainly when it's well, like I said, with Ballard, it would have been a media-driven frenzy, which fired the fans
controversy after controversy, right? So it's nice to hear something good for a change.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not the first time I've heard that players enjoyed Ballard as an owner. He treated everyone well.
One night I walked into the rink and Mr. Ballard was in the trainer's room because he had diabetes. He was being treated. And so I walked by and Mr. Ballard goes, "Hey, Allan, I can get you a ride at Greenwood next week." And I looked at him and said, Mr. Ballard, you better be nice to me. He goes, "What?" I said, "You better be nice to me. I'll ruin your reputation and tell everyone you're a nice guy."
Oh, so good.
I think Wendel, I've heard stories too of Wendel loving him as well, and saying lots of good stuff about Harold Ballard. Because actually, one of the questions I was going to ask you is like, what was it like playing in the '80s? Arguably one of the darkest decades in Leafs history. It couldn't be easy, and I recall so many good draft picks and top end picks with Clark and Courtnall and a lot of great talent in the '80s, but unfortunately, it didn't work out.
Well, the situation was we didn't have the right direction, either from the GM's position or the coach's position. When you hand the team over to a guy like Claire Alexander and try and get him to run an NHL team, you're destined to fail. We just didn't have the right leadership in place. Mr. Ballard was loyal to players that played in the system and didn't go outside the alumni for coaching, general manager. It would have been good to have a better direction and would have made the team more cohesive, maybe put the right lines together, maybe instilled some confidence in players instead of fear. So I think it was that. I mean, we had some great players from Bill Derlego to Boreas Salming to Rick Vive, Wendel Clark, Gary Lehman, Eddie Olchuk, Mark Osborne. We had players. We had great players. We just needed to someone to bring them together. A coach like Barry Melrose would have been completely fantastic for our organization. He knew how to motivate each individual separately. And I end up having a little bit of success with Barry in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about that, I mean, we might as well roll right into, if you're talking about a dysfunctional team in the '80s, not necessarily at the fault of the players and maybe not even the owner to a point, we might as well talk about the perceived rivalry between yourself and Ken Reggett at the time. I mean, there was a lot made in the media about that too, and I was always curious about that. And I know we chatted about it briefly last night, but I mean, I'd just like to hear your comment on the rivalry between the two young goalies.
Well, Ken and I had a professional rivalry. We were both 19 years old. We both wanted to play. We both didn't want to get sent down to the minors. Coaching and ownership, or coaching and management, would always pit us against each other and try and force us to be in competition all the time rather than being together and working together. When I went into training camp after my first year, I played 32 games out of a possible 36 when I first came up to the Leafs, and Pombatier was in training camp the next year. I roomed with him and he said, it'll be you and I this year. You'll play the majority of games. I'll fill in. That would have been a great situation for me when you have an older goaltender who is there to help the younger guy succeed. Yep. But when you throw two 19-year-olds on a team that's struggling, Ken and I, we did the best we could to be there for each other, but we couldn't be because we were in competition the whole time.
Yeah, it's rough to reach a potential when you're always, fearful and, just always hostile, intense. You know, it's not the best way to get the potential out of people.
I had a coach in high school, and that's the one thing he always used to say. The last thing you want your goaltender doing is looking over their shoulder, and he meant that
Absolutely.
literally and figuratively. They don't want to have to be worrying about their job, and they don't want to be looking over their shoulder for that, and they don't want to be looking over their shoulder for the puck either. So, I really find that whole concept fascinating because again, it was driven, or it was the problem was created by the coaches, and then of course the media got hold to it, and they didn't do it any favors. You know, who's the number one, who's the number two, what's going to happen here. I mean, the articles were, I won't say numerous, but it was always a topic. Whenever they ran out of something to talk about in Toronto, it would go back to, you know, a couple of key stories that they would always hone in on and try to make something out of what should have been nothing, you know. So
And they still do it all the time.
well, that's the media, right? I mean, Patrick Marleau just surpassed Gordie Howe in games played. And I was scrolling through the internet, and there was a lot of congratulations, a lot of tweets from former players, from great guys from the 80s, 90s, right on up through. It's a huge accomplishment to play that many games in the NHL, to be the number one guy. And good old Steve Simmons from the Toronto Sun pipes in, and he's yeah, well, you know, Marleau was basically done 3 years ago. I respect him as a player, but don't really respect how he got there. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, why throw that out there to the public? Like, what good does that do for the world?
The dude broke one of the biggest records in hockey history.
Yeah,
that's the best thing you gotta say.
Basically. So, but yeah, anyway, enough about Toronto media. No one wants to hear
Enough
about that
guy.
I even feel bad even mentioning it. Ugh. Anyway.
Yeah, I know.
But so we're talking about the Leafs. Players that you got to play with. You outlined multiple players just now. Which of the lot just stands out to you in your mind when you think about the great players that you play with the Leafs? And we'll do the same for Detroit as well, because I mean, there's some star power there. That's two all-star teams I'd love to see play each other. But who stands out to you, Allan, as the guy heads and tails above everybody else?
Probably two players in the Toronto organization that I played with. One being Borje Salming. I mean, he was an all-star. He was one of the greatest that came from Sweden, and paved the way for so many more players in the future for them to make it to the NHL. But Borje was unbelievable player. But from a total respect standpoint, I think of Wendel Clark as the ultimate Leaf. His work ethic, his desire, his his leadership as a teammate. I just think Wendel Clark was probably my favorite player to ever play with. And then you think of Detroit, one player jumps to mind in Detroit, it's Steve Yzerman.
Sure.
Workaholic. He worked every night on the ice. He worked off the ice. Steve was just a complete hockey player and overlooked as one of the greatest to have ever played the game.
Yeah. The funny thing is, what I find fascinating nowadays, I mean, those are players who dominated in the late 80s, early 90s. And those are the guys a lot of them who've gone on to be great general managers. You got Joe Sakic there, who's running a team, mm-hmm. Steve Yzerman running a team, and they're just standout general managers as well, who know the game. It's not by coincidence that they got where they are, you know.
Just knocking it out of the park on every level of hockey.
Oh, just absolute
inside out
studies of the game. So no,
I gotta ask Ryan, because you know Wendel was my favorite.
Oh yeah.
How tough was he, Allan? Like we all see the videos. The first time I saw him was actually I went to a game, our first game at the Gardens in '91, Toronto and Detroit, and then later that week, Toronto and Chicago. And just seeing Wendel up live, and was he really that strong? I know he was that strong, but how good was he?
He was an amazing player, first of all. Great wrist shot. He cracked my mask in practice one day with a wrist shot.
No way.
Yeah. And nice of them to keep it low for me. And then he'd take on the toughest guys on every team, from Sam Semenko to Bobby Probert to Bobby McGill, and he just Marty McSorley. He would take on anybody, and he was a selfless player and tough as nails. I know he blew his knee out in a game, sat in the penalty box, and got out of the penalty box and went after the guy that took his knee out, and then was out for 6 weeks because his knee was blown. But he came out of the penalty box and fought the guy first before he went and was out for 6 weeks because his knee was injured.
Do you recall the Bruce? Do you recall the Bruce Bell hit?
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, that was.
That was a big one.
Wow.
Yeah, that lit up.
Yeah, it's like me running into a freight train.
Yeah, my favorite recent story.
And he was known for that. He was known for clean body checks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Wendel was not a dirty player under any circumstance at all.
Yeah.
No.
He's a quality guy. And the recent story that we got out of Joe Bowen, like I said, when he was on the show not long ago, we always ask Wendel Clark. Wendel Clark's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. It's hard not to ask about Wendel Clark when you're talking to anybody. Like, you know, when I go to church and give confession, I ask about Wendel Clark. You know, so that's just the way it's going to be.
Can he come back?
Well, sometimes I look at him like, man, I think he could still go.
Oh,
you know?
definitely.
But Joe told us, you know, we asked Joe about because he interviewed Clark as a rookie and whatnot several times, and he of course worked closely with Bob McGill through broadcasting, and he asked Bob about you know, what it was like going to training Clark with training camp with Wendel Clark, and McGill said, man, it was intense. He said, I had to fight him 6 times in training camp, you know. And I love that story, and I always like to share that one because it tells you everything you need to know about the guy's work ethic and determination and drive, and hearing that he broke your mask, I mean, that doesn't surprise me because he wasn't going to hold back ever, you know.
It's 100% 100% of the time.
So I'm going to add that Bester's mask crack to my list of reasons why I love.
He did it to Cujo.
Yeah.
Yes, and he did it to Cujo in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never forget that one. What a shot.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, amazing. So obviously, we talked about this last night, but I want to talk about it again because I know a lot of fans a lot of my card collecting buddies, my memorabilia buddies have asked about this. A couple of years ago, they released a Centennial box set, 2016, I guess it would have been. And I was so stoked, went out and I got myself one of the boxes and whatnot. And the card I hit, of course, was the Allan Bester assigned seat. So a piece of patch of seat from Maple Leaf Gardens signed by Mr. Bester. And in the same box, I also got the paper cut. There was 10 different paper cuts in the set, or in the box anyway. There's 50 paper cuts in the set. I was always curious the process that goes through, Allan, for the cards to make it to you, and how the transaction goes with the company who's providing it. In this case, it would have been President's Choice, so they're not even affiliated with the NHL, but just curious.
You would get a phone call or an email, maybe possibly through LinkedIn. They'd ask if I would be interested in signing so many autographs for X amount per autograph. And you agree to it. They send you a contract, you sign off on it, you send it back to them, and they turn around and either FedEx or UPS you a 500 cards. And you sit down over a couple days, 2 or 3 days, maybe a week, and sign every card and package them back up and send them back to them. And then they send you a check. So it's pretty easy transaction. It only takes, half hour, 45 minutes, a session to sign, and you do that for 2 or 3 days and you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. And pretty easy money, I guess, for you guys, which is always nice little pat on the back after all the years.
A couple extra bonuses.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing that you're going to pay your mortgage with, but
No.
No.
a little extra
Fill the
cigar
fridge.
money.
There you go.
Yeah. Chad, you had something you want to talk about with regards to the
Yeah.
surgery.
I grew up as a goalie through the minor hockey system. I was a house leaguer, and I was happy being that. And I was learning, and I always watched you a lot with my dad. And watching the Super Series back in the day, I was trying to find this goal because it's something I learned, and I had to scour for a while before I found it. And it was December 31st, 1989. It was the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Dynamo Moscow. Super Series in the middle, like Christmas time, just after Christmas, and you're playing these games against, Russian teams. I remember the first goal of that game, and I just saw it recently, where it's kind of crashing the net. You're getting pushed back in the net once again, but the puck's coming in, and you use the glove once again, and you catch it, but you go back into the net. I'm like, hey, he saved it. And my dad's like, well, it's still a goal. I'm like, what do you mean? It's in his glove. He was like, but it's in the net. I'm like, but it's in his glove in the net. He saved it. Like, he did his job. The net's not doing anything. And, I learned that night, okay, keep the puck out of the net, even if it's in my glove or anywhere. But at 9 years old, I was like, hey.
I'm glad I could teach you a lesson. That's
yeah, I know. And you know what? I still think it should be a save. If you catch that thing, man, that's yours.
My puck.
Listen, you know, hit. Equivalent to catching a baseball over the fence. It's
exactly.
Not a home run. It's not a home run. If you're,
it's true. Yeah. Actually, I never even thought about it like that, Patty. You're paying.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah. No, I still disagree.
No, we're talking about real sports. We're not talking about baseball. We're talking about real sports.
Yeah,
slammer.
And then we ended up talking about they had a shootout after the game, and it was like Moscow ended up winning 7-4 was the total. And I don't know what it was.
I don't remember that score.
No,
I don't remember
none of those. Too rare.
I mean, no better time than to dive into the game stats, I don't think, than after that one. I mean, we made a big deal about Allan's glove work, of course, at the beginning of the show. But the two things everyone always remembers about Allan Bester was the glove and the shots faced. And the stat, I don't know the exact number, but I know it was over 30 in your rookie season. You faced over 37 shots per game on average. That was your average night. And I pulled the game logs. It was a couple pages from your rookie season, and I was scrolling through. And I mean, your first game, 41, then 29, 34, 40, 37, 34, 36, 52, 27, 29, on up through, and culminating with a 65 shot effort against Hartford.
Hartford, yeah.
Later in the season. And I mean, you were riddled with 50 shot nights.
And the funny thing with that Hartford game, I ran into Jerry Cheevers.
Oh, cool.
Who was announcing for the Hartford Whalers. And I had played against Boston earlier in the season, where I think we had a 6-game winning streak, which was unbelievable. We had this 4 or 6 game winning streak. We beat Boston back to back. We beat them in the Garden and beat them back in Maple Leaf Gardens, 2 nights, two consequential nights. And Jerry Cheevers comes to me and goes, you got me fired. Because the Leafs beat Boston twice in a row. That got him fired.
Yeah.
We'll have to take you back for the next series against Boston.
Yeah.
Yeah. Strap him on.
And again, like I said, we talked about the two big things, and the other sub note to everyone's memory of Allan Bester was the size. And like I said, the league had you listed as 5'7", 152 in your rookie year, but you tell me that's probably not.
That was a little heavy. You know, I was I'd come into practice maybe 145. I'd leave practice at 135. I'd go home, have pasta, steak, everything I could eat. Come back at 145. When I stepped on the scale after practice, 135. So same with games. Wow. I'd go into the game at probably close to 150 if I was lucky, but I'd come out in the 130s. So I was 5'7", about 135 playing most nights.
So I mean, we always see the water bottle on top of the nets now, of course, or strapped to the back or whatever. And we always every break we see the goalie, grab a sip when he can. But I mean, just how much water do you put through in a game like that? Is it an astronomical amount, or is it a liter, or where are we sitting with that?
Well, I've never measured it to be accurate, but I go through at least a water bottle per period, definitely, really? and then actually have a mixture of Gatorade water between periods, maybe 2 or 3 cups of that, because you are losing a lot of body fluids out there. At least I was.
Yeah.
So playing in the Gardens, was it like a warm rink to play in the Gardens?
Yeah, it was a warm rink, definitely. Yeah. So was Boston, so was Chicago. A lot of the older rinks were where the fans were right on top of you. The air conditioning and temperatures were a little warmer. Sometimes you get bad ice because of it too.
Yes, that's right. And I noticed Toronto was always bouncy. Everything seemed bouncy there. I started playing rec hockey again after 20-something years off, and I'd play down at Mall 1, which is our professional rink. And I can't imagine a professional athlete putting out that much energy in that kind of heat, because I'm there and I'm not very good. I'm kind of hanging back, and I am just like, I can't even see. It's just like running down my eyes. I'm like, how do you guys do it night after night at that level? It's insane. Like, it's a new appreciation when you feel that heat.
Well, you got to remember, we're doing it all the time. We're doing it every single day.
Conditioned, I guess, yeah.
For 6 or 7 months a year, and then doing it through the summer also, but not to that same extreme. You know, you play scrimmage games during the summer, and then you go train. For me, a lot of my training was playing volleying tennis, just standing back, hitting tennis balls, moving back and forth, not keeping score, just continuous rallies back and forth playing tennis. Or then I would play 2 or 3 hours of squash with a buddy of mine. We would play lots of squash, and again, you know, it was very, very intense, very taxing on the body, but that kept me in my best physical condition, because for me to sit on a bike and ride a bike for an hour was not entertaining to me. That was tough.
No.
Or getting on the treadmill or the Stairmaster. I prefer to play sports, and playing squash really kept me in shape.
And it's all lateral movement and quick reflex.
Yep.
So
Yes.
How would you rate your physical fitness now as a hotel executive, as opposed to, you know, your time in NHL? Comparable, or where are we at with that?
Have you heard of Pillsbury Doughboy?
Attaboy, that's what I'm talking about.
I've put a little weight on. I look like I've eaten Allan Bester back in the 80s.
Nah.
Yeah,
How often?
I'm fit.
Sorry.
Sorry?
No, you go ahead.
I just saying, you know, I'm vertically challenged, but being 230 and 5'7" just doesn't cut it. I need to lose about a good 30 pounds.
Yeah, get back to that sex symbol status. You got to get there, man.
Oh gosh.
Back to Hamilton.
Back to Hamilton, yeah. Patty, you had something for him?
Yeah, what was it like playing in the Gardens in those days? Again, I saw a couple games myself. Quite a difference in watching a game at Maple Leaf Gardens versus Scotiabank Arena. Totally different. I still remember watching those games. What was it like when the fans were just on top of you?
Well, one I remember quite well was Boston Garden, because they were right on top of you. I could hear the conversations between people up in the stands behind me. You know, it was amazing. Chicago, another one where it was just unbelievably loud with that the organ going, and just the noise in that facility, the way the resonance throughout the whole building. You knew you were in a game. And Maple Leaf Gardens was great, you know, but the funny thing is, while the play is going, I don't know there's anybody in there. I don't know there's a single person in the stands until I've made a save and they start cheering. It's like, oh yeah, great, you know, there's people here. But otherwise, I'm so focused on following the puck and looking for deflections, looking for the open man. Don't even know there's anybody in the stands.
No, all the senses are focused. Yeah. On that one thing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, for sure.
I love talking to goalies. It's a different breed. It's a different mindset. They get, like I said, you got to be a little weird to play goal, and I just love the goalie stories. Speaking of which, so I love goalies. I collect a bit of goalie memorabilia, like an old mask there on my Bauer and some pads and odds and ends. Just wondering what you kept, Allan, from your career, from your playing years, anything that might have made its way to Orlando and kind of got to stay the course.
Well, I got 3 things. I said to you 2 last night. My wife reminded me there was a third thing that I had forgotten, but there's about 3 things that I've kept from my playing days. And the one is I've got a jersey from just about every team I played for: Team Canada, Brantford Alexanders, Detroit. I got a Adirondack jersey, the Detroit jersey, the original 6 jersey that with Detroit across the chest. It got sold by the trainer before I could buy it. I've got a Dallas jersey. I've got my Anaheim Mighty Ducks inaugural season jersey. So I've basically got one jersey from every team I played for. So that's one thing I have. And another thing is all 3 of my masks. I've got my Toronto mask, my original one, then the second Toronto mask after Wendel cracked the first one, among other people. But that was one of the ones that needed to be replaced. So they replaced that mask, and then when I went to Detroit, we painted over that mask with my Detroit colors. So I've got a Toronto, Detroit, and a beautiful Orlando Solar Bears mask. So those are the 3 I have. And the third and last thing is the Jack Butterfield Trophy from being playoff MVP.
Oh, you son of a
glorious year.
You son of a.
Well,
how could you do
now.
it? How could you do it to us? And then we were going to throw it in your face too, Allan. I mean, like, we're diehards here, right? Like, we're old school St. John's Maple Leafs. And for those out there listening to the podcast who don't know the story, I might as well elaborate because it damaged me as a fan. I mean, I grew up a Bester fan. I loved the guy. Had the hockey cards, had the gear. And the good old Toronto Maple Leafs, as they always do, decided to trade away one of my favorite players. So in 91, Allan moved on to the Wings and was playing for the Adirondack Red Wings at the time in the AHL. Correct? Yes.
Correct.
That was the same year that the Baby Leafs moved from Ontario to Toronto, or to Toronto, to the Rock, to St. John's, and stayed for 20 years. But in their inaugural season, we made it to the Calder Cup final. And who should we run into but Leafs alumni, Allan Bester. And unfortunately, the rest is history. We really wanted to give it to Allan and make him apologize on TV, but it doesn't seem like he's overly apologetic.
Not at all. Not at all.
No. That's a beauty.
That's a beauty, man.
We got
I
the
love it.
playoff MVP handed to him here in St.
Yeah.
John's in the old
So-
Byrne Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, the stadium is
That
no
was a-
longer.
That was a great series. That was
Yeah.
truly a great series. We had a lot of battles through the playoffs with the Adirondack Red Wings, with Barry Melrose's coach, and we had a lot of unknown players, really, that played to their best abilities. And but when we got to the finals, we faced the St. John's Leafs, and the funny thing was, we went into the your barn and we won the first 2 games. So coming back to our barn, we thought, yeah, we've got this series done. We're going to sweep them in 4. Next thing you know, we lose our 2 at home. Then we go back to St. John's and we win that game. You come back here, win that game. And then we have game 7 back in St. John's. So the score ended up the right way. The good guys won. So that was good.
Oh, come on.
Damn it.
It's cruel, man. I'll tell you what you did. That arena is now a supermarket.
Oh, really?
It still looks like the arena, but it's a supermarket. That's what you did. That's what you did, Ellen.
I
You
closed down
turned
arena.
the Burn into a
It took
supermarket.
20 years, but I closed down the arena, right?
Yeah, I mean, the writing was on the wall.
So the funny thing is, we were a damaged fan base after that, typical of Leafs fans, and it took us 30 years before we got our first professional championship here, and that was just 2 years ago. The Newfoundland Growlers, which are the ECHL affiliate now of the Leafs, in their inaugural season, ironically enough, they won the Kelly Cup and brought us our first championship 30 years after Bester stole it. So screw you, Bester. No, but I think
That's been fun, guys. You guys have a good night. Take care.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Not
but
putting up with
I mean, we
this.
might as well talk about some of the post career stuff, or I shouldn't say career stuff, post NHL stuff. So we hit the Calder Cup, but you later on in your career there, you had a lot of, like anybody who played at high level of hockey for that long in the 80s, you ran into a lot of injuries. I'm just curious, do you still feel any of the impact currently of some of the stuff you sustained as a player?
Not really. I was pretty lucky. I had major ankle surgery right towards the end of my career. Something that had happened early in my career that was a nagging injury throughout my career. Finally, for whatever reason, tore. It got worse, and I had to have surgery on it. So that was one thing. And the repair doesn't bother me whatsoever. I did have acromial decompression done in my right shoulder while I was playing, and I had my left shoulder separated playing slow pitch baseball. Nothing else. So that's about it. And really, I have no limitations. I have no aches and pains coming from hockey besides, my back gets stiff lifting those boxes at FedEx.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think that would be me, and I'm only in my my late 30s, so I can respect that one. So in your later years, though, you had an opportunity. Didn't pan it, I'm sure, the way you envisioned it. But you had an opportunity with Team Canada. That must have been a great experience too, eh?
Yeah, I was thrilled to be selected to Team Canada. I would much rather have made the playoffs that year with the Leafs, but we lost out in the final game of the season, and so I got the call to go to Team Canada. So I went overseas and was in Prague, Czechoslovakia. I was in Germany. We're in Sweden. But the problem was, during a game against Germany, someone landed on me and I tweaked my right knee, and so I had. They taped it up, but I couldn't play with it taped up. So They brought in Peter Sidorkovich to replace me, and then gave me the option of staying or flying back. So I decided to fly back because I had a young baby at that time and wanted to get home.
Yeah, and I think it was Grant Fuhr and Sean Burke were the other
That's right.
two.
Right.
Yeah, that's some big names.
Big names. Yeah. Well, I mean, the 80s were full of them. We had the pleasure of having Theo Fleury on the podcast there. Oh, God, it must have been a couple months ago. And he made the point of pointing out, he said, everyone makes a big deal this day and age about the Austin Matthews and the Connor McDavids of the league and these generational talents. And Fleury said, we had 40 of those guys in the league when I played. It was just a absolutely ridiculous, offensively minded, talent-laden league. And to be a guy who had to stand between the posts of that man, props to you. Like, in all honesty, all jokes to one side, holy hell. I mean, just
facing Edmonton and Calgary and the Islanders in the 80s was tough.
Yeah.
You would face a lot of shots and a lot of top quality scoring chances. I mean, top quality scoring chances.
Yeah. Gretzky never scored on you, I guess. No,
he never did, as far as I'm concerned. He scored at least 2 on me in a game in Edmonton, and he scored 2 on me when he was with LA. That's the 2 that I do remember, both of those. Yeah. And the funny thing was Mike Allison set him up on both goals when he played for LA, which, you figured Gretzky would set up Allison, but Allison set up Gretzky, which was kind of strange.
Yeah, I guess you're not expecting that as a goaltender.
Was there anybody particular?
Gretzky makes everybody better on the ice. So,
of course he does.
Mike Allison was a scoring fanatic then.
Yeah. Was there any players you didn't like playing against specifically? Nothing personal, but on ice.
Dale Howardchuk. He kind of had my number. Him and Steen. For whatever reason, Winnipeg wasn't that great a team, and so we assumed we could beat them. So we would play a wide open style against them, and the game would end up 7-6 or 8-7. And they scored a lot on me. I think my goals against average against Winnipeg is in the 6s average. With Detroit, it's like 2 point something, but against Winnipeg, it's like 6 or 7. So that was a tough team for me to play against. Dale Howardchuk was a wonderful player, great player.
Yes, he was. Yeah, really good.
And sad news with his passing.
Yeah, that was a terrible loss for the hockey community, just in general. He done so much for the community too. He's one of those guys who was big time involved after his playing career. He used his notoriety to do a lot of good in the game and around the game. So big time loss. Well, was there a team that you felt like you had their number, Allan, when you were playing them in the 80s? I mean,
Detroit. I played very well against Detroit. They were a team that I seemed to always get up against. Yzerman and Fedorov and all those guys, and Sean Burr and Fedek and so many guys to remember. But no, I played well against them. I think I played them like 24 times, and I was 3/4 of the games were wins in our favor. And the one special night was last game of the season. We had to beat Detroit to make the playoffs. Ken Reggett started. We were down 3-0 or 4-0, 3-0 in the first period. Brophy throws me in. We come back and beat them 5-3. I stopped 2 or 3 breakaways, at least 2 with Yzerman, and we end up getting into the playoffs. And I started the playoffs that year against Detroit. So, it was. Detroit was always a team that I played well against. I had my 7 shutouts. I had 2 of them against Detroit. So when I went on the open market, Toronto put me on the open market for trade. Detroit traded for me because they didn't want me to go to Minnesota or Chicago at the time to be against them. So they traded for me, and then they buried me in the minors.
Sounds like a can't beat them, join them kind of thing, right?
Like the ultimate compliment to Allan. It really is.
I think the Leafs just did that with Dave Riddick.
Yeah, absolutely.
How good was Yzerman in the 80s? Because you know what? He never really made his number until I recall in 92, 93 when the Leafs went up against them. But like, how good was he in the 80s when Detroit were real bad?
Well, he was their bright star. He would carry that team every night. As I said, 2 players that I have the greatest respect for is Wendel Clark and Steve Yzerman. Yzerman, just a consummate pro, works unbelievably hard on and off the ice, and didn't have a lot of other tools with him. and he still was able to put up great numbers and lead that team, even though they didn't have any supporting cast for him for a lot of years.
So, you mentioned John Brophy. He was a pretty wild dude. Anything funny about John Brophy? I'm sure there's got to be countless stories about Brophy.
There's countless stories about John Brophy. I had him in the minors prior to coming back to Toronto. He brought me back to Toronto after I got sent down in my second year. John was unbelievably passionate about the game and about winning. And he would come in between periods if we weren't playing well and lose his mind, just absolutely lose his mind. Had white hair and beaked red, and he'd take his suit jacket off and tear it to shreds. And I often wondered how many pairs of slacks that he have in his closet with no suit jackets. John tried to go underneath the stands in LA one night, stood up too quick, and the stands hit him in the back of the head. And he's standing on the bench, and there's blood running down the back of his white hair onto his collar. The trainer's trying to get him with a towel. He's like pushing him away, going, "Leave me alone, leave me alone." Brophy's bleeding all the way down the back of his neck.
What was he doing back there?
John was an intense character. Well, you had to, you either went all the way around and came across the ice and got to the bench, or you could sneak under the stands and get on the bench. Well, that's what he tried to do, and he ended up cracking his head. But
I recall seeing a picture of that.
Good, and he was pretty upset, and he wouldn't let the trainer touch him. It was funny. John was quite a character. Quite a character.
Yeah, no, he definitely was.
There's a lot of video going around, or some pictures going around of that incident, where you can see the red blood just going through the pale white hair. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tough old man.
Guys, I got a couple of questions. When we put out that we were having Allan on, I'm not shocked, because I mean, this podcast in particular is for the hardcores. This episode in particular is for the hardcores. I mean, a lot of Leafs fans who would be in their early 30s, 20s for sure, but early 30s, and then hardly at all, would recognize the name, but probably wouldn't have gotten to see Allan play. So this is for the old guys. Our demographic, turns out, according to YouTube, is like males between the ages of 35 and 45. So this is
kind of like
primo for those guys. And a lot of guys, you know, they commented on our links and stuff, and they're like, "Oh, Bester, he was my favorite goalie. Oh, Bester was the best guy." You know, it was a lot of, well, there's nothing negative. It was all positive stuff. And
fan fave. Yeah,
we put out asked if anybody had a question they wanted us to pass on to you, and we did have a couple of responses come back. Brandon Lake, he's been a big supporter of our podcast right from the get-go. Cheers to you, Brandon. He messaged us and he said, "What is the most crazy story about Harold Ballard that you have?" So I don't know if you have anything crazy, but what's something that really sticks out in your mind about Mr. Ballard?
Well, as I said, Mr. Ballard was a good man to me. Well, the one night I was injured at the time. I'd blown my knee, tweaked my knee, was out for a few weeks, and so I went to go watch the game in the coach's room. And so I waited for the players and the coaches and everybody to go out on the ice. And so I sneak into the coach's room, going to sit there and watch the game. And sure enough, Mr. Ballard's in there. I was like, "Oh, hi, Mr. Ballard. How are you, sir?" And he's good, Allan. He goes, "Why don't you come with me and come sit in the bunker with me?" I'm like, no. I am going to be mercifully crucified by the players if they see me sitting in the bunker with Mr. Ballard. So how do you say no to your owner? So Mr. Ballard and I went and sat in the bunker, and he's like, no, don't sit back there. Come up to the front here. We're up to the counter and watch the game. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm trying to hide back in the corner so the guys don't see me. And so for the next few weeks, they called me King Clancy.
Oh, I love it. That's a great story. Another one that gentleman Aaron Webb wrote in, and he said, "What would be your favorite memory, the one that stands out the most during your time with the Leafs?"
Favorite memory, probably that game against Detroit where we won the. We ended up winning after being down 3-0 and coming in and turning it around and ended up winning the game 5-3, and that and probably my first start at Maple Leaf Gardens when I played against Chicago and we tied the game 2-2. and that kind of set the stage for being a fan favorite. The Leafs were having a tough season, and I got to start my very first game in Maple Leaf Gardens and end up getting a tie with Chicago, and end up getting first star that night. Murray Bannerman got second star, and those two memories probably my favorite times in Toronto.
Or
games.
Solid ones.
Amazing. Well, we already touched on our least favorite Bester memory. That would have been the Calder Cup. I'm still miffed, but anyway, we'll move on. I can't drag this to my grave with me, so I got to let it go. I'm going to let it go. But it must have been pretty sweet, though. I mean, I've seen the clip. I have it. It's on YouTube for any of you guys want to search it. Search Bester Calder Cup, and it shows the MVP trophy presentation. And it must have been so sweet to be after having been traded by the team to Detroit, who intended on making you go away so that you weren't a problem for them, to be able to look up and see Leafs brass. It must have been a sweet moment.
I gave them a little wave and said, thanks a lot. This is a culmination of a year-long getting back into the hockey world and into the hockey talk. And supposedly I was supposed to go in the next year's expansion draft to Ottawa. But whatever happened, it didn't end up materializing. And I ended up working with Chris Osgood in the minors all the next year. Chris and I split the season and we worked together, and then he went to Detroit and I went to Anaheim.
Wow. Amazing. Guys, I don't want to keep Allan all night. We're very lucky to have had him basically twice now. He's like a fourth.
I know, we're old pals now.
We're old buds. We'll see you again tomorrow night, Allan.
When's our next show?
Absolutely. But guys, did you have anything else for Allan? So I've been hogging a little bit of spotlight here. You got anything you wanted to?
No, I got everything I wanted twice. I'm good.
Yeah, no, this has been a real pleasure. Yeah, one of my the only thing I wanted to mention is that Calder Cup. How cool was it that you see Felix versus Bester, some of the iconic goalies in Leafs history over the years. So very cool moment. And again, Potvin came up the following year, the Toronto. But no, I just want to say it's been a pleasure, Allan.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here.
Oh, and there was a question that did go in, and I did ask, how was the celebration after the Calder Cup at St. John's? And you're pretty sure that you guys hopped right back on the Detroit Red Wings plane.
Yeah, we were quite lucky that Detroit offered us or allowed us to use their private plane to fly back and forth, because we were chuckling that we would be back in St. John's the day before St. John's team got back. We'd be already in our hotel and in our rooms, and
all ready to go.
St. John's would be flying out the next day on a commercial flight. And we had hot meals on the plane, and we were treated so well by Detroit during that series, because Mr. Ilitch, that would have been Mr. Ilitch's first championship before they had won anything in Detroit. So
right.
Actually, that was going to be my follow-up question. Did you have a relationship with Mr. Ilitch? Because he seemed to be another fan, another player favorite.
Yeah, he
really
favorite.
He was really.
He really treated the players well, very well. He was a huge fan, and as I said, he was the reason I was in Detroit at all. He told Brian Murray to trade for me so that I wouldn't go to Minnesota or Chicago or Chicago, Minnesota. Who else was in that division? St. Louis. The Norris division.
So you had Ilitch and Ballard in your corner. I mean, that's
it don't get any more iconic than that, to be honest.
No,
I mean, it really doesn't. No, I've got nothing else for Allan other than I got my closing statement, I guess, and that's always off the top of my head. The resounding theme among players who have spoken about their time playing with Allan Bester, the fans who've got a chance to interact with Allan Bester, anybody who you mention Allan Bester to, there's never a bad comment. I've never heard one, which is what made me love the player even more. So the fact that we got 2 podcasts for the price of 1, thanks so much for making time for us, Allan. It's again truly a dream come true for me to be able to even sit down and chat with you about these topics and hear some of the inside stories. Something I'll always remember. So I really appreciate you taking the time, sir.
Reliving, like, my kids are the age when I was a fan of yours, like back then, and it just brings me right back to that. And I'm showing my kids constantly the Leafs and everything I'm into, and I see how my boy responds more or less, and it's like it brings me right back to it. And so I really do appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, my pleasure, gentlemen. My pleasure. You guys have been great. I've had fun the last 2 nights, but
Absolutely.
I'm busy tomorrow night. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
your loss, Bester. Your loss. All right, sir. We appreciate it. We'll. I'm sure we'll be talking to you down the road, and we've got something coming your way as well. Something out of token of appreciation, we'll say. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that very
all right,
much.
sir.
Crazy.
All right, sir. Well, your services are no longer required. We'll let you exit stage left. Same deal as last night. You just click the.
Take care. More power to you.
Yeah. We'll be in
What an
touch.
asshole.
After all this time, right?
If I get to Orlando, I'll look you up at the Hilton.
Sounds good.
I'll bring a
Sorry,
St.
Allan.
John's Leafs jersey.
It's like, sorry, Allan, we're going to go with the Ken Reggett episode.
Oh, well played, sir. Well played.
Take care, guys.
Thanks,
Yes,
Alan.
you too, buddy.
Bye.
See
Bye.
ya.
Okay, guys. So that's it. That's our episode 13 with Allan Bester. I mean,
Best are done.
Amazing.
yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm probably gonna end up. I mean, this is gonna definitely get a million YouTube hits because I'm gonna watch it a million times myself. Because the guy is
First
just such a
week.
quality dude. You know, he's you know, he's living a life where, you know, hockey was a huge part of his life early on, and now he's closed that
His
chapter
entire life.
and moved on
Yeah.
to another portion of his life as a family man living in Orlando, where he finished his career. And he's just a great dude. I can't express enough what a great guy this guy is.
A great example of an 80s player.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Him,
Absolutely.
Potvin were at the top of my list for top goalies in my time of watching the Leafs.
Mine too.
Yeah, that was a dream to be able to sit down and chat with him tonight.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. I got to go up and dig out his rookie card now because I think I have it.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I feel like I've
Yeah,
got
I
some.
think I have
Bester-
it
I know
too.
I do somewhere.
Except
I
my
just
parents, I'm sure.
I got to dig it all out. Anyway, no, guys, if you enjoyed the show, make sure you give it a like there on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching it. If you really like the episode, you know, drop a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. If you got any good ideas for future guests, we're always open. Not saying we can get them for you, but we'll certainly give it the old Allan Bester try. Yeah, so if you're looking for places to catch up with Deke Snipeselli, make sure you check us out on our own webpage at dekesnipeselli.ca. You'll get us on Facebook at Facebook/Deke Snipeselli, on Twitter. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at SellyDeke. And more importantly, of course, hit that subscribe button there. It's to your, that way, next to Patty, between me and Patty, right above Chad's head. But guys, if there's nothing else, let's shut her down. All
Have a
right,
great night.
go Leafs, go. Peace out.
Go
See you,
Leafs.
fellas. Go Leafs.